Hi, my name is Stacy and I'm with InSLStitches, and I'm going to do a tutorial today to show you how to make these crocheted pumpkins. They're knit look and they're great for fall decoration around the home. Now, to make the pumpkins, you will need some Woolies Thick and Quick or super bulky yarn, an L hook. You will need both a blunt end yarn needle and a sharper pointed one that will be able to fit the super bulky yarn, some either twine or ribbon, and some fiberfill. And for my pumpkins, I use a cinnamon stick for the stem. Now, to make these pumpkins, I use a stitch technique called a half double crochet slip stitch in addition to a slip stitch to create a knit look in crochet. So this pattern will use these stitches, and I'll show you how to do that, and you'll be able to create a crocheted pumpkin that looks like it's been knitted. Okay, so to get started, we're going to take your super bulky yarn or your Woolies Thick and Quick if you have that, and your L hook. Okay, and we are going to start by chaining 16. So now in the second chain from the hook, we are going to do 2 back loop slip stitches. Okay, so go into the back loop of the chain you just made, so that's the one that's sitting on top, and do 2 slip stitches. Okay, and then we're going to do what's called a half double slip stitch. And how we do that is we yarn over as if we were to do a half double crochet. Okay, and then put the yarn through the loop there, yarn over, pull through, and then you're going to continue to pull through that same yarn through the 2 loops on the hook. So that creates a half double slip stitch. Okay, again, yarn over, put your hook through the back loop there, yarn over again, pull through, and then pull through the 2 loops on your hook. Okay, so we've made 2, now we need to make 7 more for a total of 9. Okay, now we have 4 chains left, and we are going to back loop slip stitch into those last 4 chains. Now remember not to slip stitch too tight because you do have to work into these stitches, and it's a little bit tough if you're doing really tight slip stitches. So just keep a bit of a looser tension. Okay, so we've back loop slip stitched into the top 4, and that's our first row. And these pumpkins are worked flat, and then we seam the edges together. So we're doing repeats of basically 2 rows with a 3rd row that's thrown in there that will mark our lines in our pumpkins. Okay, so that's row 1. We're going to chain 1 and turn. Okay, now this is what the look of the slip stitching creates. It's a bit of a bumpier stitch. And you see you're starting to get some V formations there that looks like the knit. So we're going to turn and look for the back loops that you just made. Okay, so that's these ones that are along the top here. And we're going to work for row 2. We're going to work a back loop slip stitch. Okay, so 15 back loop slip stitches on row 2. 15. Okay, now we're going to chain 1 and turn again. Now row 3 is going to be a repeat of row 1, which is to start with 2 back loop slip stitches. Okay, and then 9 half double slip stitches in the back loop. And then finish row 3 with 4 back loop slip stitches. And chain 1 and turn. Okay, so there you can see some ribbing starting. All right, and now we're going to just continue repeats of rows 1 and 2. Row 2 is the back loop slip stitch, which is always done on the side that's the stitches that are facing you, so the right side. Okay, and your combination of your back loop slip stitch and back loop half double slip stitch is always done on the back side of your work. Okay, so you can go ahead and do more of your repeats. So the next row here is going to be a row 4, which will be a back loop slip stitch, and continue until you hit or you finish row 7, and then we have just one slight change up for row 8. Okay, so now I have finished row 7 and I have done a chain 1 and I've turned. So now you can see we've created 4 sets of ribs. Okay, now row 8 is going to create a line in the pumpkin. So we are going to do, instead of doing back loop slip stitching for row 8, we're going to do a back loop half double slip stitch all the way across. Okay, so I'll bring this up a little closer again. So this is the back loop half double slip stitch. We're going to do 15 of those for row 8. Okay, so as you can see, that doing the half double slip stitch on the even row creates a slightly different look. Okay, so you get like a little bump here instead of a creation of the V. All right, now we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to go back to repeating our pattern. So we are on an odd row, row 9, which is a back loop slip stitch, and that's 2 of those. And then 9 back loop half double slip stitch. Okay, and then 4 back loop slip stitches. And chain 1 and turn. Okay, so you can see the difference and how that 8th row there turns out. Okay, and now we're back onto the pattern. So on row 10, we have back loop slip stitching all the way across. Okay, chain one and turn. Now you're going to just continue to repeat your row 1 and row 2 until you get to row 15, and then row 16 is a repeat of row 8. Okay, so essentially we're creating 4 ribs and then a line. That's a row 8, and then you do another set of 4 ribs, and then on the 8th stitch after those, you will do your back loop half double slip stitch all the way across. Okay, so we are going to be creating 5 sets of 4 ribs, and we are going to go until row 40, and then we will do the seaming of our edges together to start actually creating the form of the pumpkin. So go ahead and continue your row 1 and 2 repeats to create your 4 ribs, and then for this next one it'll be row 16 that you'll have your change up in the back loop half double slip stitch all the way across, and then you can just keep going, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll do the seaming up of the edges. Okay, so I've just finished row 40, which was a back loop half double slip stitch across row. Okay, now I'm just going to chain 1 just to hold that there. And now we're going to seam the edges together. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold the right side together. So just bring the row 1 up to the last row so that the right side facing are together. Okay, turn your work. All right, and get your hook back in that loop there. And then we're just going to slip stitch the ends together. So just go through the loop from the last row you made, actually get both loops on there, the whole stitch, and then go through to the row 1 chain and just slip stitch together. Okay, and then you're going to do that all the way down. Okay, so now you've seamed your edges together. I'm just going to chain 1 there. Now we're going to fasten off our yarn and leave a large yarn tail, because we're going to be finishing the entire pumpkin on whatever you have left with your yarn. So you're going to need about 50 inches. That should be more than enough. So you're going to take your yarn. I usually pull out the loop just to give myself a little bit of extra. Okay, and then we're just going to measure out about 50 inches. Okay. And then we'll put our yarn ball aside. Okay, and now we are going to turn the work right side out. Okay, so now you see this is what we have to work with now. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take the blunt end yarn needle, let's see, we're gonna pull this loop through to secure that. Okay, and this tail can be actually just tucked underneath into the inside of the pumpkin there. So now we're going to be closing up the bottom of the pumpkin. And how we're going to do that, okay, is we're going to go, see here at the top of your work, you've got these, the ribs, the bottom of the ribs. Okay, we're going to actually take our yarn through the top edge here and underneath those ribs. Okay, so that we can cinch this together as neatly as possible. Okay, so what I do is I just kind of bring the yarn to the front. I just poke it through here. Okay, so we're just going to go underneath the ribs. So it doesn't, you want to be as close to the top as possible, okay? So you'll find that when you go in through here that there's actually like a little pocket underneath there. So you're not really, you don't need to go through yarn or anything, but you just kind of go underneath all those ribs. Okay, and sometimes you can go through that little bump there from the half double slip stitch row. You don't have to, but every now and then you can kind of get your yarn in there. Okay, then you'll find that you can't really see the yarn that's being pulled through here because it's hidden underneath the ribs. But we're going to use this to cinch this end together. Okay, instead of weaving back in and out from the tops, this creates a much cleaner look. Okay, and you want to go through every rib that's at the top. And again, stay as close to the top as you can. You don't want to go too low because then you're going to end up getting some edge puckering and that won't look as neat. I'll just go through that bump right there. Okay. Okay, so now we've come to the end here, and I'm just going to go through that last bump just to get the yarn through. Okay, and then I also then just come back to the beginning and go through a couple ribs. So let's see here, right there. Okay, so now you're just going to pull on this to close. Now you don't want to tighten it all right away. You're going to actually go in and get your yarn through those ribs one more time. Okay, and this time, okay, I'm just getting as much around the top as possible, but keeping the yarn underneath those ribs so it doesn't show. Again, take it through the first couple ribs at the beginning there. Okay, I'm just going to pull on this inside tail here a little bit. Okay, now you're going to pull as tight as you can. Okay, don't pull on it so tight that you're going to snap the yarn off, because that would not be good. Okay, but pull it tight enough so that you've got it mostly closed, and you see you get a really nice finish, okay, with that. And so your pumpkin will sit nice and flat. Okay. So now I'm just going to get my yarn inside the pumpkin, and we're going to do one more round inside just to secure the closure and to make sure that it stays closed. Okay, so we've turned it inside out now. We're pulling the yarn to the inside of the pumpkin. Okay, and again, I just pull tight. Okay, and you will see some puckering on the inside, and that's okay. So now I'm just going to go in as much as I can on the inside around that bottom, just to secure the closure, to kind of get a bit more of a cinch closure. Now it's important that you are pulling your yarn tight, because we need as much yarn as possible to continue with the creation of our pumpkin. Now it doesn't have to be perfect when you're working on the inside. You just want to secure this. Okay. I'll also just double back once, just to keep the yarn from slipping. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this out again and show you how the outside of the pumpkin is going to look. Okay. So now we're back onto the inside of our pumpkin. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to switch out the needle to the sharp end needle. It just makes it easier for the work that we're going to do. The blunt end, I go in and out of the pumpkin, so the blunt end doesn't work as nice, and it's just using the sharp guy, it's a lot quicker and easier work of it. Okay, so now with the yarn on the sharper needle, I'm just going to go through and bring the yarn back up to the outside of the pumpkin. Pull, and then back to the inside again. So I just try and find a crease that I can work into where I'm not going to see the yarn on the outside, all the ins and outs, backs and forths. Okay, so now we're back on the inside of the pumpkin. And what we're going to look for now is that we're going to cinch this pumpkin together, okay, and make the little bumps of the pumpkin. So if I were to bring one of my other ones here that I have, so we're going to kind of make these little indents. And how we're going to do that is we're going to find the half double slip stitch rows that we did that gave you this little bump look on the outside. Okay, and when you flip them over, you're going to see a bit of a thicker rib compared to the other ones. Okay, we're going to go through those to cinch. Okay, and it doesn't matter where you start. You can start anywhere, wherever your yarn is closest. I'm going to start over here. I'm not going to start on the seam edge. Okay, so as you can see, this is a bit of a thicker rib right here, and it corresponds to one of those 8th rows right there, which is the back loop half double slip stitch. Okay, we're going to take our yarn, okay, we're going to start at the top. So we're bringing our yarn up to the top. Okay, and we're just going to go underneath one of the sides of those stitches there that are making the rib look. So just go underneath. Okay, don't pull too tight yet. Okay, just get your yarn going underneath and go all the way down to the bottom. Okay, or as close to the bottom as you can. Okay, so now you're just going to keep pulling on that. Okay, and what I do is I pull, flip it back out a little bit, and I pull until I get a bit of a cinch going on. You can see it's coming together like that. Okay, you don't want to pull too tight. Okay, you just kind of want this to look even. And I leave about, oh, I don't know, I'd say probably not quite an inch left of that yarn. But I'll pull it just to make a nice shape, and then I'll go in and then I kind of like manipulate it a little bit to smooth it out. Okay, but you want to try and bring the top closer to the center. Okay, and once I've done that, okay, I'm going to put the yarn through to the outside again. And this is just to secure that cinch. So pull, and here you can pull a little bit tighter again if you want. But I also just work that yarn a bit to get the look I want. Okay, and then I just go back up to the inside of the pumpkin again. Okay, so that's the first cinch. Okay, now you're gonna look for the next row 8 there, the back loop half double slip stitch row. Okay, and there you can see the bit of a thicker rib. Okay, and again you're gonna come up to the top first and just thread that needle through underneath the one side of that rib and pull through. Okay, and get it as close to the bottom as you can. Okay, and we're going to do the same pulling of the yarn and creating another little cinch. Okay. Again, I just kind of get my fingers in there and I just, after I've pulled the yarn, I just kind of work it until I get a look that I like. Okay, and you'll be creating like little pockets, rib pockets here. And that's where we'll put our stuffing. our fiberfill. Okay. So again, I go to the outside of the pumpkin just to secure what we just did. And I'll just pull a little bit tighter to make sure I don't have any loops of excess thread or excess yarn. And then I go back in, up through the middle. Okay, give that a nice pull so you don't see that yarn. Okay, and then you're going to repeat that all the way around on all of these ribs to bring in all your pumpkin in. Okay, and then once we've got all that done, then I'll show you how we're going to stuff that. Okay, so I'm at the seam edge where I have my last cinch that I need to do around the pumpkin, and this one's a little bit different just because it is a seam edge. So I just go underneath somewhere in the middle and try and just catch as many of these stitch loops as possible. The other thing to remember about this is to not go so far through that you're going to be able to see your yarn on the outside of the work. You want to try and keep the yarn to the inside of the work as you're doing this. And I'm just gonna get this towards the bottom. Okay, and then give a pull. The other thing is too is that you don't want to pull the top end of the pumpkin all the way into the center. You want to have a little bit of give there because we still need to finish off the top of the pumpkin just to seam it closed. Okay, so again I'm just going to go through the bottom to the outside and back up again. So now our yarn is back on the inside. Okay, I don't know if you can see, but there is, this is a little bit of the yarn that's left from the cinching all the way around. So you want to leave a bit, okay, and you don't want them to be all even either because you kind of want your pumpkins, I mean, unless you want your pumpkins to look very symmetrical, but I kind of like it when they're a little bit off all the way around. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add our fiberfill. Okay, now I add just a little bit at a time, and then that way I can kind of see where I need to add more. But I start by just adding little bits into each pocket you created. Make sure I kind of get it pushed out as much as possible. Okay, then I go around again and add a bit more. You don't want to overstuff right away because we still need to close up the top. So you don't want to make that a hard task. Okay, and then you can kind of feel if there's any gap spaces. And you can fill those up if you want. I just keep pushing the filling out to fill up these spaces here. Okay, that's good for now. And what we'll do is now we'll switch back to the blunt end needle, and we're going to get the top up, closed up. Okay, so just bring your yarn, pull it through here. We're going to do the same closing as we did for the bottom of the pumpkin. So again, we're going to look to go bring the yarn underneath these ribs. Okay, and here you'll want to probably go underneath some of the 8th row bumps as well. Okay, so again, look for those ribs. I pick up a bump every now and then and go right underneath. And go underneath ribs and make sure you're staying as close to the top as possible. Okay, I'll pick up that bump there. Okay, so now I'll just go back underneath some of the first ribs here. First 2 here. Okay, and then pull. Okay, now don't pull it all the way closed yet, because you just want to kind of get a sense of, is your pumpkin stuffed enough? Do you need a little bit more? If you need to add some, you can easily at this point just stick the stuffing where you need it. And just add little bits at a time, because again, we still have to close this up. So, all right. Okay, so I'm going to pull again a little tighter. Okay, and here I just kind of try and shape as much as I can here. And you see this is the bottom. It's looking pretty good. Okay, pull a little tighter. I'm going to do one more round of just putting the yarn underneath those ribs. And this doesn't have to be perfect at this point. You just want to make sure you're getting the yarn around again. Okay, so now this is the point where I get my cinnamon stick. Okay. And then I just insert the cinnamon stick into that hole at the top that's still left. And I just kind of very gently twist around just to kind of get it into the stuffing. Okay, you don't want to do it too hard because you might break the stick, but you can use I guess some twigs or some wood pieces as well. But I like using the cinnamon sticks because they have a nice smell and they are kind of they have a good look to them. Okay, so now we've got our cinnamon stick in there. Okay, now we want to kind of secure it because I don't add any glue or anything in there. I just leave the cinnamon stick in there. I just make sure I get it into, I can feel it twisting into the stuffing as much as possible, kind of get it looking the way you want it to look. And then I just keep going around the top to try and get a tighter cinch around the cinnamon stick so it doesn't fall out. Okay, so at this point we're pretty much finished, other than adding either ribbon or twine around the cinnamon stick for extra decoration. Okay. Now the cinnamon stick isn't going to be like super secure in there, but we're going to try and tighten around it as much as possible. Okay. And you can keep going around as much as you want to, as long as you got enough yarn left to do so. Okay. Now once you have it the way you want it, and you see this is pretty secure in here. Okay, I just do a double back. To secure that yarn and the closure there. Okay, and then I'll go back one more time. And then what I do is I just stick the yarn in through the inside into the stuffing, and then I just kind of find a place to come back out in the pumpkin. There we go. And I just pull the yarn through. Okay, and then I just snip off the end, being careful not to, and then that end will just kind of pop right back in. Okay. All right, so there's our pumpkin. Okay, and again, you can just shape it. Okay. Now I'm going to add a ribbon to this. Okay, and what I usually do is let's go from a different angle here. Okay, wrap it and then bring it around to the front. I didn't use as much ribbon as I normally do, but I usually leave like a tail like this on both ends. But this is just so you can kind of get an idea of what to do here. And this is what it actually should look like right here. Okay, and that is your pumpkin. All right, I will be writing up a pattern for this, and I will make it available as soon as I can, but I thought I'd get this tutorial out first, and it will also be accessible through the pattern as well, so you can follow along. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy making your pumpkins.